All right, so today we're gonna do a topic on Outcasts, and this topic is very important to me, or very very personal to me, because I've been an outcast my whole life. You know what I'm saying? I never really fit into any group, whether it was in school or outside or whatever. I never really had a group. But I always had friends. I always did have friends. And one of the reasons why I always had friends was because I was always used. I was always the person that always had I always had money, you know what I'm saying? I always had, I always was had girls and stuff like that, and my friends would use me or tag along as wingmen or whatever. And what's crazy is it took me a while to be able to see that I was being used. And I had people that were telling me that. I had girls that used to tell me that all the time. I had a female that used to tell me that all the time. Yo, your friends are using you. But I'm thinking in my head, they my friends, who you? I know them longer than you. And they were using me. And the reason why I'm doing Outcasts is because I truly believe outcasts are the people who would be considered to be chosen ones. The people that can think outside the box and are strong and courageous enough to lead this country or lead people into a new way of thinking for this world to move forward are people who have been battle tested for this position. We are talking about people who were outcasts. If you look at every prophet, other than King Solomon and stuff like that, they were outcasts. One of the main reasons why, even in the Bible, one of the main reasons why Jesus was such a figure that was surprising to everybody was because Jesus was a carpenter. His father was a carpenter. He was a carpenter's son. He came from a carpenter family that is a very low family. This is not carpenter in the Western culture carpenter, where you can make a pretty good living, middle class living as a carpenter. This is really back in the day, carpenters was that was a cashier. You know what I'm saying? So, and no, there's no offense to cashiers, but I'm just using this as an analogy. So the reason why Jesus stuck out so much was because he was a carpenter's son. Then you have the fact that Jesus became a shepherd. Now, why a shepherd? Why did Jesus become a shepherd? There's a reason for that. Jesus really led sheep. Now, sheep not in the sense of what we look at sheep now when we call people sheeple and stuff like that, but you really kind of need a blind following to be able to lead with this level of security, because a lot of people just will not be, a lot of leaders, people will not want to be led. So you have to be as docile as a sheep to be led. And that's why, there's so many parables about this, But I don't want to go too far into even religion, because I could go, but I am going to touch up on religion. But the reason why I was outcast so much is because people look in you and see your light and see all the things that they don't have within themselves. So it stirs up jealousy, envy, and things like that. And I never was a jealous person growing up. I never had to fight that battle. But what I have found out with years of being able to be around very jealous and envious people and hate-driven people is that they nurture those emotions because they're so used to not having. For example, a hate-driven person, let's just use an example of characteristics, right? You grew up dirt poor, right? and you look at somebody who has money, and you're like, man, that boy, like, I mean, like, he nutty, like, why I ain't got no money? You know what I'm saying? A person that has strong, love for themselves is going to be like, damn, he got money, you mean? But you're going to go and get your own bread. You're going to be like, man, I could get it too. Because you got self-confidence and things like that. A hate-driven person is going to be like, man, I don't even like that boy. Like, I'm going to go do something to him and all that, just because he got money. So you have hate-driven people because of no, like, lack of self-esteem, and not being strong-willed and strong-minded and strong of character. And I'll never forget reading Albert Einstein. He literally said, great beings have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. I'll repeat that again. Great beings have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. And I concur, because most people that have violent opposition from others have little minds. They have one way of attacking what they consider to be a problem, and that's violence. That shows me you have a mediocre mind. But even in turn, and I'm not saying that all violence is led by mediocre minded people, but that also shows me in turn that you have not even loved yourself enough to find out why you have such a violent opposition to these things. And love is the key, right? And this is what makes the Outcast so pure. And I'll get to the love part. Love is the key, right? What makes an outcast so different is because love is one of the things that drive an outcast. And when I mean outcast, I don't just mean a person that is an outsider, like a person that won't fit in the groups, like a bullied person and stuff like that. I know what that feels like. But because if that was the case, then the Columbine shooters and things like that, they would have been love-filled people, and that they weren't. You see what happened. But what I mean is like the prophet type of people, you know what I'm saying? Or great people like Steve Jobs, and I mean, that's just economically great and stuff like that. But also Mahatma Gandhi, who were able to lead people, Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and no matter what you think his political stance was, Malcolm X was full with love. He had a wife and kids and everything. He was filled with love. And he loved his people. And he loved himself. Malcolm X said that he wasn't free until he went to prison. That means that he was able to tap into that love, the love that his mentor, his master, his sensei, whatever, however you want to see fool, however you want to call it, they taught him how to do that by teaching him the nation's teachings and the Honorable Prophet Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad. So, like, you have these great followings, you do, and there's many of them. I'm Muslim. I just so happen to follow Islam. But you have so many different great teachings. And it just makes us different. But it doesn't change the fact that we all strive for the same things. And that doesn't really technically make us different. Now, one of the craziest things is, like, our society is completely lost. And there's no great thinkers and no great leaders. What happens is society just flips upside down. With social media today, you have the popular people telling you what's right. You don't have the more pious people telling you what's right. You have the most popular people telling you what's right. So you have like these popular people going online and stuff like that, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this person is this or this person is that and all that, right? And they're giving you, essentially telling you how to think, right? And what I have learned, normally when people tell you something that is wrong, that is hateful, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. I have not been right. I have not seen right things. Like I have assumed things about people and not seen anything right. Like I've assumed things about people from what, social media, I get off social media and stuff like that, and it don't be right. It's never right. It is never right. I have not seen it right one time. If anybody can tell me that what they have seen, if they've seen something right, you let me know. But most of the time it's been wrong. And I guarantee you're going to look at it and be like, damn, you're right. It's been wrong. All right. When I was reading philosophy, right? This is crazy, right? So I'm reading philosophy. And this guy, Ward Farnsworth, he says this about the Socratic method. He says fanatical partisanship, which is what we see like in partisanship is like what you see in politics. So fanatical partisanship, wishful thinking in place of truth, shaming of dissenters, the censorship of self-censorship of dissenting views, inability of people who disagree to talk, let alone cooperate, everyone sees all this on the rise. And most thinking people fear and loathe all that involves and portends. When he used that in the book for the Socratic method, what he was saying is that you have a group of people online, and this is even important. You have a group of people online that want the right to speak, like they want the right to speak. They want to practice their right to speak in the Western society, but they have also a right to think first, but they don't think. They do not think. They have no capability to think, but they want to speak. You have people that will jump to conclusions. They use their opinions to form their facts. But that's backwards. You need to have your facts formed and then you form opinions. But the facts have to be based into truth. And truth creates the facts. Obviously, a fact is truthful. And then you create an opinion. But right now, right now people create opinions and then they create their own facts from opinions. And they think that's the truth. This is insanity. This is completely insanity, y'all. Insanity. I look at and envision this place as, in the religious text, Sodom and Gomorrah. It's that bad. You have exactly what was happening in Sodom and Gomorrah and in Gog and Magog. You have exactly that happening. If you look at the story of Gog and Magog, which came first, they were the descendants of Japheth. Both of them, I'm sorry. Gog and Magog and Sodom and Gomorrah all had descendants of Japheth. They're all descendants of Noah. All right. They had a hideous appearance. Now, they say a physical appearance, but let's move on. Let's go on for that, because they say they have a hideous physical appearance. Like they were really ugly to look at, right? And when I look at people in society, I see like a lot of their aura, right? And I try to stay away from people a lot because their auras are dark. And they don't have no shine to it. And I don't know how to explain that to a person that can't see it, but it has no glow. And I remember they say this about people who just come home from jail. They like, yo, you got that glow. Or they say that to women, like, oh, you got a glow to you. When women are super happy. And when you look at me, I have a glow. You can see it through the screen. I don't know if it's because I'm super happy. I think it has just a lot to do with just my spirituality. but I have it, and I see people with it. Unfortunately, is very few and many, and they navigating themselves through this dark world. Now, darkness is not that bad, and I'll get to that why darkness is not that bad. But there's a reason for darkness. Don't get it wrong. There's a reason for the night. I mean, there's a reason why we have a night. Why we have a lunar shine and things like that. These things are important. Like if you ever look at the yin and yang symbol, this is what it talks. A symbol. This is what it talks about. But let's go back to the descendants of Japheth and the Gog and Magog. They were the most wicked and unclean of all the peoples who lived on this earth. Then they were as ignorant as animals. Now this is important. They said they were most wicked and unclean as all the peoples that live on this earth, and they're as ignorant as animals. And I discussed in a prior video about how the Egyptians used to depict animal bodies on human features. The head. If you look at the Sphinx in Egypt, that's what it depicts. That just means that a person has a human head, like with the ability to reason, but they still are being pushed and pulled by the animalistic nature of their body. And then they lacked human reason, and they were completely godless. They lacked human reason, and they were completely godless. So you have a society right now that is less religious in the Western society, and they are almost completely godless. You have people that just don't believe in God. And if they do believe in God, they're faking it. Because you have people that are religious, they'll say like, oh, I'm this, I'm Christian, I'm Jew, or I'm Muslim, or I'm Hindu, or whatever. But they'll do completely godless actions, which shows you that they're completely godless. It's almost impossible to look and to really, and I mean, this is what makes a person a believer. And I'll get to explaining that in Islamic terms, but it changes your perception of some of the sins that a person does, because it's almost impossible to believe in God and to do some of the things that people do. I'm not saying that everybody that kills doesn't believe in God and things like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that some of the things that they do makes them completely godless at that time. And then they try to repent, and they'll come back, and then they become a person that believes in God again. And I'm not judging this in the sense, like, I'm not the judger, you know what I mean? But I know that this is what happens, because it's impossible to see that in a person that will commit those acts. And they will admit it too, because if they ever redeem themselves, redemption, and come back and repent and redeem themselves and come back, they'll say that. They'll say like, yo, at that point, yo, I didn't care about nothing. And I'm gonna tell you about life, right? I'm not I'm a regular person. I'm a regular man. I'm not like this high and mighty person. This is not, you mean? But I do very good things. I'm a very good person. Like I believe that I'm a good man. And one way I can prove that is not just by my light that you see and my shine and my aura, but the fact that I have been put in unbelievable circumstances, unbelievable Jones. Like I've had some of the worst circumstances that would have killed another person. And I was able to rise. Now, don't get it messed up. I know, you know what I mean? I know that was God. Like, I know that was the Lord. He's the best of all planners, and he favors me. But why does he favor me? If I was totally a piece of trash, why would he favor me? I'm not talking about materialistic things. I'm not talking about, having the haves and the have-nots. I'm completely talking about being able to rise from the mud. Why would he favor me? Why would he favor you? He favors you because you are a chosen one. Because you are one that can rise from the mud. Because you are built like that. You cut from a different cloth. And you can't let anyone put you either in the in-class crowd or put you too far out the out crowd. You have to make sure that you stay true to yourself and your position and your position with God. And when God favors you in your life, you can be thrown into anything. You could be thrown into the fire and you will still rise to the top. But you gotta have that faith in you, and you gotta have dog in you, yo. You gotta be able to take a hit. And you don't even necessarily have to hit back, but you gotta be able to take one. That's for sure. And if you have to hit back, you make sure that you hit back, and you make sure that that's a good one. And I know it's gonna be a good one. Because when a chosen one decides to hit back, it's one for the ages. It's one of them Jones that they make sure that's over. Yeah, it's over. The fight over. That war over. It's over now. Because you should have not messed with that person. You need to stay in your lane. You're not built like that. Now, in Islam, if you are a believer, we will say you're successful. It's قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. It is successful are the believers. They are believers. They'll be of the successful. And in Surah Ankabut, in the second verse, the second and third verse, they say, أَحَسَّبَ النَّاسُ أَنِّي يَتْرَكُوا أَنِّي يَأْكُلُوا أَمَّانَ وَهُمْ لَا يَفْطَنُونَ. And he says, do people think once they say we believe that they will be left without being put to the test? Throughout any books on prophets, if you believe in the Abrahamic religions, it don't matter which one you believe in. You could believe in Hinduism. You could look at the Vedic text. Ramana, the books on Mahabharatas, which talks about even all types of stuff, nuclear war and stuff like that in them texts. If you read those texts, all the prophets went through tests, trials, and tribulations. When you are a believer, you will be tested. When you are a chosen one, you will be tested. Why? Because the Lord needs you. It's simple as that. God needs you. God needs you. And God needs us. He needs us. Excuse me, hold on. Let me rephrase that. God doesn't need us. Let me change that. I don't mean it in that tone. God is using you. So God needs you to be prepared to be used. Something like that. Because God doesn't need us. Obviously, he doesn't need us. We need him. But he's using you. He's using you. And you got to be prepared for the position that you have. Whatever you were chosen to do on this earth, make sure you prepare for it. Make sure you want to be used. Make sure you can be a sheep. to be used for him. That don't necessarily mean you got to be docile. He could use you to be strong. But just make sure that you have enough humility in your heart to be used for God. And that takes the dissimulation of pride, the eradication of it. And there's two passages in the Bible and in the Quran that talks about losing your pride, about losing it, shedding it. You have to shed your pride, yo. Every hardship I've ever been in was off of pride. It was all created for myself because of pride. Because of pride, yo. And until you lose your pride, you won't actually be that strong. You won't be that strong. I don't care what you think you is. You could be the most Jeffrey Dahmer type of person, you know what I'm saying? Like but you're not going to be strong. Look what happened to him. Look what happened to Hitler. I mean, we're talking about people that would kill anybody, that killed a bunch of people. Like, I mean, they were like, people were afraid of these people. And God struck them down. And why did God strike them down? Because you need to lose pride. You have to shed it. Now, when I said a certain darkness is needed, there's a reason why you need the night. Now, Osho, also a very great thinker, he was a sage back then. He said a certain darkness is needed to see the stars. I actually put that on one of my covers on this genre. And you have to overcome or transmute fear and sadness for a great awakening. Fear and sadness, they kind of go together, right? So you have your fear, you have your sadness, and what fear does, and I'll go to even like looking at like Star Wars, right? People love Star Wars. Yoda said, "Fear leads to hate, anger leads to fear leads to hate, anger leads." I'm sorry. Fear leads. Hold on. I'm gonna mess this Yoda. It's fear leads to sadness, anger. Fear leads to I messed it up. I don't know it. I messed it up. But it's like fear leads to hate, anger leads to suffering, hate, and hate leads to suffering, or something like that. But the reason why I brought that up is because hate is cyclical. If in everything that we see in written history, the first thing a person do when they be inflicted with pain is they want to hurt the person back, right? So this is what tick for tack starts, right? So we're like, oh, you bomb us, we're going to bomb you back, right? We see that happening now with wars. And then it's an escalation, right? Escalation theory and all that. What they have yet to notice, if we're such a Western society built on Christianity and things like that, is Jesus flat out said, turn the other cheek. He flat out said that. And even if you listen to Judaism, which is eye for an eye, or even Islam, which is the same thing, eye for an eye. In Islam, I know for a fact it says that it's an eye for an eye, but if you forgive them, it will be better for you. And that's the exact text. If you forgive that person, it'll be better for you. I don't know exactly what it says in the Talmud, but when you are contributing back in the cyclical nature of this violence or fear or hatred and stuff like that, all you doing is basically feeding back into the cyclical nature of reality. The sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. We know this. We see it every day. Sun rises, then it sets. Alhamdulillah, you was able to see it. You woke up today. But you know what else we see every day? The fact that we can't stop warring with each other. We can't stop bombing each other. We can't stop doing all this weird stuff to each other. We can't stop hating on each other. We can't stop being envious towards each other. Like, yo. How many times you gotta play the same song in your life before you realize that it's never gonna change?